Hi all, this is my first attempt at recording a video for YouTube as a multimedia annotated game. I've chosen Letelier versus Fischer, which I seem to have done quite well on the Playwright the Master facility of chessworld.net. I vaguely remember this game from the past because I thought it was a very good example of undermining White's pawn centre in the King's Indian. The King's Indian defence is after d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4. White set up a big centre of pawns. Black often undermines those pawns later. Here it seems as though Fischer slipped up by immediately playing castling here, allowing White to seemingly punish Black for this move order instead of Black playing d6 here to stop the e5 advance. So Letelier's probably feeling quite confident that he's managed to get this e5 in. Was Fischer asleep during the game? Did he purposely allow e5? Well, the game showed Fischer's remarkable resources in the position of the King's Indian to be able to undermine White's centre pawns later. Fischer just seemingly passively retreats the knight to e8. White reinforces the centre with f4. Black now starts undermining the centre with d6. So White seems perfectly okay here. You've got this big centre of pawns. It can't possibly collapse, or can it? White plays bishop e3, and now Fischer ambitiously seems to sacrifice with c5. But it's not really a sacrifice. If d-c, d-e, Black is not down on material. So this is a perfectly fine, sound move, putting more pressure on White's d4 pawn. And so is this structure that solid? It's starting to look a bit dodgy. White played dc anyway, dc5. Now Black, instead of playing de5, which would allow exchange of, which is actually illegal rather, because the queen would be in pre, Black just really did sack a pawn with knight c6 here. So White's temporarily a pawn up here, but White's centre there's a vacuum being created behind these pawns, and White's development is still very poor on the king's side. So White plays cd, quite materialistic. Black ed6. Now White played knight e4. Fischer detects that Black's king side development is not that good, and he carries on playing actively, a pawn down with bishop f5. Knight g3 was played, now bishop e6. So here, if we look at the position, there's still a lot of pressure being exerted on e5, and now Black really is probably threatening d takes e5. White played knight f3, just allowing d5, but Fischer still doesn't take this pawn on e5. He carries on this policy of pressure, queen c7, avoiding any simplification of queens. White plays queen b1. Now Black finally takes on e5. Has White got a good position? Well, at least White has f5, which seems to be quite promising and aggressive. But instead of Fischer just playing gf, which would allow knight f5 in a nice sort of aggressive position, Fischer plays e4, offering another pawn. White takes the bishop, Black takes the knight, White takes the pawn. Now instead of Fischer just playing fe6, he plays f5. And after f4, knight f6, Black's rooks are now connected, and Black's piece is all very active. White is still materially a pawn up, 6 pawns here versus the 5. The king side is still not very well developed, but he does start now to develop his king side pieces. Bishop e2, rook fe8, king f2. Is White's troubles over? Is White manually castling here? Well, rook e6, rook e1, rook a e8. There's a lot of pressure being exerted on this e-file, but has White got away with it? Bishop f3, and now bolt out of the blue. Fischer sacrifices the exchange with rook takes e3. This is a brilliant continuation because there is something about white's king safety here which Fischer has detected. After rook e3, king e3, can you spot black's next move? It's an absolute brilliancy and puts this game as a very memorable game. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're very good tactically if you've seen this. It was queen takes f4, and white had to immediately resign, because if king takes f4, then bishop checkmate.